I work with students applying to medical school and other graduate professions to be able to support the application process. And so much of my journey started here as a UCLA student. When I was a student here at UCLA, I was very lost, had no idea what direction I wanted to pursue. And it was through a class with the Career Center that I was able to kind of find the world of counseling. And I participated in a peer advisor internship at the UCLA Career Center and later ended up pursuing my master's in counseling, specializing in college counseling and student services. I've been in higher education for a little bit over a decade now, and I now also support students with their medical school applications. It's been a little over 5 years that I've been doing it. I love supporting students through this process because each one of your stories is unique. Every process is unique. And right now, many of you are probably in a very stressful point with applications coming up tomorrow for submission. If you're already applying to TMDSAS or AACOMAS, you may have already submitted. And that means that secondaries are right around the corner. It's one of those concepts that usually sits in the distance for students because the main goal is always getting that primary application in and submitting the personal statement, getting the experience description sorted out, getting the letters, the school list, MCAT, all of that. But secondaries really sneak up on you quickly, and they do take a significant amount of time, much more time than students expect. So you're all here at a great time because verification process is not fully in the go yet, again, unless it's DO for you. So you still have time to be able to do everything to get ahead with secondaries. Now, I want to understand a little bit about who's in the room tonight. So if you can tell me a little bit about where you are in your application process, that would be great. Also, totally fine if you're like a freshman or sophomore, just here to gain a little bit more information. I just want to understand who is here with us tonight. So if you can drop that in the chat, that would be great. Submitting primaries tomorrow. Good luck. Wow, you're on it day one. Freshman submitting tomorrow, gap year and studying on the MCAT, planning on applying for med school next cycle, sophomore applying tomorrow, applying this cycle, incoming freshman submitting tomorrow, third year applying this cycle, submitting primaries tomorrow. Amazing for you. Make sure this year's application is different from the last ones you submitted. Feel free to stick around till the end so we can chat about that a little bit. Applying this cycle, submitting tomorrow, submitting this week. Sophomore who just switched, great. Even if you switch majors, please note that you always have an opportunity to pursue medical school. It's never too late. Just make sure you're starting to tackle experiences and prereqs now. So it's great to see so many of you applying this week and so many of you here for an early start. If you are applying this go round, good luck. I know that you're all in the heat of a lot of work right now. Also, please note, I know that many students mentioned that they are applying tomorrow, which is fantastic. Typically, if you are within the first couple of weeks, you are totally okay. Verification processes, usually that first batch will be verified by like the last week of June. So if you are still in the process of getting things done, note that you've got a couple weeks to still be in like that very early first batch. The first 3 weeks are ideal. First 2 weeks, best case scenario. So those of you that are submitting tomorrow, fantastic job. Those of you that are still working on it, note that you do have a little bit of time. You don't need to worry about getting it in tomorrow, but try to aim to get it in the next couple weeks. So everyone that is in the heat of it applying this cycle, you've probably heard about secondaries before, but the depth of it and what it fully entails, I don't know if you've all fully gotten into that yet because you're in the primaries. So I want to kind of try to break that down for you to make it a little easier. So once tomorrow comes along or you run through the next couple weeks, you'll be able to kind of have a more realistic gauge of what you're getting into. Today, we're going to discuss the secondary applications, the timeline and strategies to navigate these, the common pitfalls, and common prompts and frameworks toward addressing these prompts. So, First, you want to understand what a secondary is. As you've all been working on your primaries, you've come to see that primaries are applications that get sent to all schools that showcase your interest in medicine and the different experiences that have gotten you there, really showcasing why med and the skills that allow you to become a good future physician. When it comes to secondaries, these become a little bit more specific. Instead of going to every single school, secondaries will be sent to one school. So each school will have their own school specific essays that they request of you after primaries. And those are used to highlight your strengths based on what the school is looking for in their candidates, along with addressing ways that you connect to the school. So when it comes to secondaries, these are all going to be school specific. You want to make sure you have a strong understanding of the school and an understanding of the different skill sets and experiences you want to highlight based on the particular school's mission and values. Now, before you start writing, you really want to understand the role of secondaries and why this will be important in the process as you're starting to kind of approach this writing sequence that's going to be coming up. So first off, in the primary, schools will be able to see again why you'll be a good fit for medicine. With the secondary, this is where they'll be able to see if you were a good fit for them, for their school specifically. So it's going to be an opportunity for you to align with the school's mission and values, and for you to demonstrate genuine interest in the school's culture and suitability for you based on their offerings. So this is where you'll definitely want to take time to learn about each school beyond just it being a medical school in your state or a med school that's highly reputable. You want to be able to have a full understanding of the program offerings, what clinical experiences they have, any classroom specifications that are unique to them, any research opportunities that are unique to them, any opportunities to go abroad. You really want to fully understand what that school offers and why that aligns with your experiences. It's also a great place for you to provide new insights. So remember, if you're working on the primary application now, you've probably seen how much you've contributed in terms of different writing, different contributions with essays, your personal statement, your letter writers writing about you, every experience description, giving a different perception of who you are. Now, this is a place to continue writing about yourself in a way that, again, connects to the school and also provides a fresh insight on your growth, your achievements, and who you are as an individual that will fit in with this school. So you want to be cautious with secondaries about repeating information that's already in your primary. Use this as a space to only include new information that will highlight who you are as an applicant and will let the school know that you'll be a strong fit. They already have all the stuff that's in the primary. Every time you're writing something, you want to provide new information. And this can also make a really big difference in you being able to get an interview. Because with secondaries, this is your chance to show the school that you are a fit for them. So that's going to allow them to be able to better determine if they want to meet you to give you an interview after receiving your secondary applications. It's kind of that final plug to be able to give that verification that you're a great fit for medicine, you're a great fit for their school. Now that see you in person, make sure it all aligns, that you'd get along with your peers here, and that we want you here. Now, keep in mind, different schools will have different prompts. We're going to run through some prompts as we progress a little bit later today. But it's, again, a chance to demonstrate your fit, your medical school journey, and more about you. Some will even ask very personal questions about your background. Some schools may even ask questions asking you to run through a biographical sketch, basically laying out your life from the time you were born till now. Some will ask about your childhood. Those are less typical, but you want to note that basically everything is fair game with these essays, and it's also going to be a huge chance for you to be vulnerable and reflective. This is where your application kind of stands out from the other essays related to why medicine, because with why medicine, aside from that pivotal aha moment that opened the door for you, it's very common to have clinical experiences in there, research experiences, community involvement. This is where other components of your background may come in that showcase who you are and your unique strengths and character that can allow you to contribute to the school with a different angle from many other applicants. So, the secondary invitation process is one of the nuances that students can get very lost in, and we're going to go into the timeline next. But basically, secondaries, it's very exciting to receive one. However, nowadays, most medical schools offer a secondary to almost every single student. So keep in mind that you will be getting secondaries from like 95% of the schools you apply to. There are a few schools that still pre-screen, like UCSF and UCSD, and some top 20s as well, like Harvard and Yale. But in general, most schools will provide you with an interview. And this is going to be, again, that opportunity for you to showcase not just why you're a good fit for medicine and the experiences that led you there, but also why you're a good fit for their school. That's going to allow them to then give you a fair chance to present who you are to them in the best light that's going to allow them to have a strong assessment of you. Now, the one part of this that gets a little bit tricky is that since they're not pre-screening, sometimes regardless of how strong of a candidate you are for their program, you'll still be getting a secondary. So you want to think this through in terms of aligning your school list as well, because sometimes students will get really excited about getting certain secondaries from schools that are more reach in their school list. But please note that all schools will be sending these secondaries to everyone. So you want to be efficient with where you're submitting to because this is going to take a lot of time that can then be used as well for other schools. And it's also going to utilize financial resources because I'll get into that later, but every secondary requires a payment or almost every. So you want to be very considerate of what that lack of pre-screening for many schools will do in terms of your process and timeline for other schools and other secondaries you'll be working through. With that said, aside from the content that comes into essays, which I'll give you a layout of what's the best way to navigate those, I usually also suggest highlighting the schools that you have the best chance for first so that you're focusing on those secondaries, getting them in the most timely manner before then jumping into all the rest and having that potentially impact the timeline of how early you submit the quality and early needed essays, just considering your actual competitiveness to certain schools. Now, make sure at this time you are checking application portals for every school because many of them will be inputting secondary information in their portals. So you want to make sure you are checking on this very, very regularly. This is also going to be essential in ensuring that you are staying organized. So as you're running through these essays, I suggest having a separate email address for the application process. Apps haven't opened until tomorrow, so if you haven't done so, you can always get that in. If you've been working on it already with an existing email address, totally fine. Just make sure you're giving yourself proper time to look through emails every day because things can easily get lost. But again, make sure you're checking the different application portals. I'm going to get into like a little tracking system I suggest you all have later on when it comes to looking through secondaries and just progress with every school. But on that tracking system you create for yourself, maybe like an Excel spreadsheet or something, you can also just have links in there for each of the school's application portals to push you to actively stay on top of looking through each one. All right, and this is where the timeline comes in because many of you have probably heard about secondaries and have heard that it's important to pre-write. But when it comes to pre-writing these different secondaries, what have you all heard? And also with application portals, I'm referring to schools also having their own specific portals like within their page that they want you to submit to. Yes. So what have you all heard in terms of the secondary timeline? Just so we see where you all stand with the understanding of this concept. And it's okay if you haven't heard anything about it. That's totally acceptable as well. Within 2 weeks of receipt, fantastic. Anything else? 2 weeks, 2 weeks, ASAP. Yes, absolutely. So you are all very on top of this. Pre-write using past prompts, fantastic. Yes, you are all really aware of this process, which is great. Can range from 2 to 8 additional essays on average. Yep, that is true as well, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you all of a sudden have that for like 20 to 25 schools coming at you back to back, it really adds up. And then some of these schools have secondaries that are like a paragraph long, while others have secondaries that are literally like a page an essay. And all of a sudden, you're writing an 8-page secondary for one school, while other schools still need your attention. So those are the nuances that make this process a little bit tricky. But yes, as many of you shared, you are on top of it. The goal is to submit secondaries within 2 to 3 weeks of receiving them. So once the application opens up tomorrow for AMCAS and TMDSAS and AA COMAS are already open, you will be able to submit your application to then go forward with the verification process. The verification process takes 4 to 6 weeks, and this is a great time for you to pre-write secondaries. Why? Because within these 4 to 6 weeks, nothing else is going on. No one is sending you essays because they still don't have your application yet. Of course, you may be preparing for Casper preview, but in terms of what schools are going to be asking for, this 4 to 6 week period is going to be relatively quiet. So you want to utilize this time to jump ahead with writing so that it can simplify your next steps and ensure that you're able to continue making progress. So the moment those secondaries come in, you already have things drafted. And in this session, I'm going to put different common themes and common prompts that you'll be approached with in the chat or in the presentation. So we'll be able to run through that together. So you'll just be able to have an idea of different things you want to prepare for. But outside of that, there are essays from the past years available. So it's usually good to look at that. Every once in a while, schools will change a couple of their essays. We've seen like 2 or 3 schools last year that like entirely changed it. But typically, even when that occurs, the pre-writing process helps because you're able to pull enough content tailored to the school already to ensure that you can quickly transfer that over in an efficient manner. So these 4 to 6 weeks of verification are a great time to pre-write your secondaries. And then once you receive the secondaries, your goal is to submit them within 2 to 3 weeks of receiving them. The sooner, the better. Obviously, quality matters. So I always say make sure you're actually providing quality essays to the schools instead of submitting just to submit, because 2 to 3 weeks, if 2 weeks becomes 2.5 weeks, but those 3 to 4 extra days lead to a better essay, that's going to take you farther than the 2 week submission, but essays that aren't as strong with the quality you're submitting. But aim for that 2 to 3 week timeline no matter what. Do not wait for the school deadline overall. If they tell you their deadline is in October or November for the secondaries, or some say you have like 2 months, be very, very cautious with following that because your application is going to fall way lower on the list and it's going to make it much more difficult for you to stand out. They value timeliness in this process and applications are rolling. So the more you wait, the more it's going to impact your chances of being able to progress in the application process. With the 4 to 6 week application submission timeline, in the past, typically the earliest secondaries came out right after 4th of July. Last couple years, we saw the first round come out the week before 4th of July. So you may see that happen as well. Now, one thing to keep in mind with these early submissions and just any submission timeline, honestly, is that you'll start getting these secondaries very quickly. Now, if you're submitting within the first 2 weeks, sometimes your secondary submissions will be and receipts will be spaced out within a 2 week range. So maybe you'll get one like June 27th. Maybe you'll get one like July 7th. Maybe you'll get one July 13th. It's spaced out a little bit more just because schools are still getting everything under control on their end behind the scenes as well. If you're submitting a little bit later, expect that almost every secondary will come within like a day or two, and that expectation of 2 to 3 weeks still stands. So, with all that said, keep that in mind with how many schools you're applying to. Sometimes this also leads students to want to stagger submissions to schools and maybe have a certain list of schools on their application up front. And then once they submit certain secondaries, add additional schools to the list because their application's already verified. So once they add extra schools, typically within like a day or two, they can get that secondary. But that can help students then navigate the timeline in which they are receiving these secondaries and need to submit them. Okay, so with pre-writing, this typically allows you to get your ideas on paper early, and it allows you to get an idea of the school, what they're looking for, and the experiences that you've had that align with all that before the submission deadline or submission timeline even comes forward, so that you can create a genuine voice and have time to make any revisions to your essay based on character count changes or content revisions that need to occur once that timeline is present. And again, pre-writing just makes it easier for you to have enough content to pull from so that once the timelines actually start ticking and you actually receive those secondaries, you can move forward in an efficient manner without being too stressed out or overwhelmed. Now, with the writing process, you want to have a clear framework of what you're trying to exhibit about yourself as you're communicating with each of these schools. Have an idea of the different skills you're trying to highlight, the strengths that align with their mission and values. And if they're asking you about like a time you failed or a challenge or a weakness, have examples ready to go as well that you'll be able to translate into your essays. But make sure that you're showing that flip side of adversity in there as well and always highlighting skill sets and messages that you learned as a result of it. So if you ever come to a question that's asking about something that's framed as negative, like a failure or a time where you faced a challenge, we don't just want to address that challenge or failure, but rather showcase what came as a result of it so they can see how you'll learn from that and apply that to other challenges you'll face in the future. In terms of school portals, schools will contact you specifically with information regarding their portals and being able to log in to create accounts for them. So just keep an eye on that overarching email address. So any updates that come through, you'll be able to receive without having it negatively impact your timeline. Okay, so common secondary themes. There are lots of different secondary questions that you will come across in the coming months. Some will feel like they're coming out of left field, like who is your greatest role model, or what's the best book you've read, or if you were a superhero, who would you be? These are just like random questions that some schools will ask, while others will have combinations of the more standard questions falling under diversity, challenges, or adversity contribution as a few. With diversity, that'll be highlighting your unique background and perspectives that came along from that. With the challenges, that will be discussing a challenge that you overcame or an obstacle that you overcame, exhibiting adversity through this essay. Contribution will allow you to be able to showcase how you align with the school's mission and what you've done to be able to contribute to community and society. And that one also kind of overlaps with the school fit essay, which will also kind of focus on allowing to see how you and your skill sets and experiences align with their mission and values. I'm going to go into this later, but when you are reviewing the school's mission and values and incorporating that into your essays, make sure that this is being personalized. We want to avoid copying everything from the school's website. I know it's easy to just pull the buzzwords directly, but they want to see how you're actually applying their mission with your work, how you've had opportunities to be able to showcase these skill sets. Of course, when possible, because sometimes you'll have an essay that's a page long and sometimes it's shorter than an experience description, less than 700 characters. So that can make a big difference in how you're able to convey that connection to different schools. That will also make a big difference in how you end up navigating the writing process because you can have two different school fit essays. One you can write countless paragraphs about, and the other one just needs to be simplified into 3 to 4 sentences, but still showcase that passion. Then you have the gap year essay, which will have you discuss any meaningful experiences that have occurred during any gap years. So, for those of you that are applying tomorrow or in the coming weeks, if you are a senior now, that means you're going to be taking a gap year. So, make sure that you're incorporating any meaningful experiences that you're going to have in this gap year. If you have already taken a year off, which I don't believe any of you have that are in here, but if you have, then you would write about that opportunity of what you did during those gap years. In the gap year essays, you can focus on academic experiences. You can also focus on any other opportunities you ended up exploring. I've also seen some students needed to focus on caring for family. Some students needed to focus on retaking prereqs or doing a post-bac if they weren't pre-med previously and needed to pursue that pathway a little bit later. So those are all different things that can come into this essay. And then the anything else is really anything that does not already fit into the application that you want the schools to know about you. So this can be related to certain grades. It can be related to a passion that's not related to medicine at all. So it can even be like hobbies or skill sets, like maybe you've swam your entire life, but there was really nowhere to put that. Maybe you've been training for like marathons over and over again and you've done like an Ironman or something and that's a way to connect with family and there was no way to put that, like you can identify that here as well. So really anything that is not included anywhere else in your application. If you have any pitfalls or challenges that you faced, this would also be a good place to kind of provide justification for that if it didn't fall into your other impactful experiences essay as part of your primary application. So before we go into some prompts that you can come across with these essays and overarching concepts for these few essays, do you have any questions to address? Happy to continue on forward if not. Just want to make sure that I'm giving everyone the space to ask if needed. All right, I think we're good to continue. I'll leave the chat on the side just so I have it as a frame of reference in case anybody ends up asking anything. Okay, so the diversity essay. This can be any sort of diversity of experiences, family background, geographical location, diversity in terms of experiences or populations that you've worked with. Educational history can fall into this as well. Culture, socioeconomic background. It may even be a salient racial, ethnic, or socio-cultural identity that wasn't previously addressed anywhere. And this would be a great place to express it and ensure that it connects to any components of being a future physician that will strengthen your application. These are some of the common prompts that you'll be able to address in terms of the diversity essay. Oops, it looks like the diversity essay got mixed in with some others. So for the diversity essay, it'll be things like X School of Medicine values diversity in all its forms. How will your background and experiences contribute to this important focus for our institution and inform your future role as a physician? Or it can come in the sense of how will you contribute to the diversity and inclusion Michigan mission of our medical school, or something like the admissions committee uses a holistic application to evaluate a wide range of student qualities and life experiences that are complementary to demonstrating academic excellence, strong interpersonal skills, and leadership potential. What unique qualities or experiences do you possess that would contribute specifically to X School of Medicine's community? So again, each of these are asking about diversity, but the way you would identify your connection to the school and your diverse background will vary depending on this. This is also where you can think about the different populations that school serves, where it's located, and what communities it may support. Even being like a Californian can be a connection for many of you. Maybe they have like a population that is connected to your roots in some way and allows you to be able to tie in a fit there. All of those can be directed along with, again, populations that you've worked with in the past. Then we have the challenge essay. So far in your application, you've really been focused on highlighting everything that's been good, everything that allows you to stand out as an applicant, that makes you a better fit for the school, that allows them to see skills you've accomplished or achievements that you've had. But with the challenge essay, this is the time where you're going to get a little bit vulnerable and address something that you failed with or didn't do well with to, on the flip end, demonstrate your maturity, self-reflection, and growth. Now, with this, it can get really easy to fall into blaming others or fall into a sob story or even a case where you bring up a failure but don't address how you overcame it. Make sure that you are very cautious with this essay and utilizing it as a space to stand out, as a way to showcase your maturity, your reflection, and growth. With this essay, you want to showcase your resilience and your ability to grow. You're going to describe the challenge, how you responded to it, what the outcome was, and the lesson that you learned as a result of the challenge. So again, when you're coming across a challenge or adversity essay, we never want to stop at addressing the challenge. We always want to take it one level further by being able to showcase the lessons learned, how you grew as a result of it. It's very easy to say you faced a challenge with a professor that didn't give you the grade you wanted and you weren't happy and stopped there. But it takes a lot to be able to showcase going there after school, taking accountability, listening to the feedback, even if it was negative at times, using that as an opportunity to reflect on your errors, going to tutoring, and then learning how to then apply the changes that were needed to do well, and then actually becoming a TA for it the next semester after you failed the first semester. That's just a small academic challenge that came to mind on the spot, but many students have much more thorough challenges that they identify, and it's always helpful to have a challenge that's a little bit more unique as well, that wouldn't be typical of what other students would be able to identify as well. So some common prompts that you'll come across for this will be things like briefly describe a situation where you had to overcome adversity, include lessons learned and how you think it will affect your career as a future physician. Please describe a challenge you faced and how you addressed it. Share with us a difficult or challenging situation you have encountered and how you dealt with it. In your response, identify both coping skills you called upon to resolve the dilemma and the support person from who you sought advice. So they're having you take this one step further and not just showcase how you were able to reflect on this dilemma and deal with it, but also how you were able to ask for guidance, which is going to be a big step in medical school in general. So some schools will be able to will want to see that up front as well with an essay like this. Then we have the school fit essay, which could also fall into the contributions essay as well. So I'm kind of going to hub those into one. For the school fit essay, you're going to want to be able to showcase the school's mission, patient population, curriculum, research opportunities, or unique offerings that they have that make you want to go to that school specifically. So you want to be able to, for this essay, highlight exactly why that school stands out to you. There may be similar concepts that you have one school to the next, maybe knowing that you want to work with a diverse patient population, maybe identifying certain facets of a curriculum that are important to you, like maybe you want to start clinical hours earlier or like first year. Maybe you want to be able to participate in a lab with a certain um, PhD student or MD PhD candidate. Maybe there's someone actively doing research that stands out to you. Maybe they have a program that's Global Med Incorporated. So those are the aspects that are going to be able to kind of differentiate the opportunities. Um, Avoid restating the website, as we mentioned earlier, and make sure that everything you're mentioning also ties into your experiences. So it's really easy to give a list of all the reasons why you want to go there. But if that doesn't tie into anything you've spoken about before, that can pose a challenge. So if you're bringing in a diverse patient population, make sure you're writing about how you've supported that in the past. If you're bringing in a research opportunity in neuroscience, you want to be able to showcase maybe you were a neuro major and loved that pathway, or maybe you participated in a neuro lab before. Show that connection so that they're able to see that the passion goes beyond just listing things that are on the site or that you've heard about the program and actually tie into why you want to attend specifically. With the Y school essay, be very careful because this one gets very easy to want to copy paste. We've seen or heard about many students accidentally submitting an essay on behalf of the wrong school. So be very careful with this. It gets easy to want to copy paste. And this is one of those essays that really needs to be tailored and personalized. Some prompts you'll see for this one will be things like, given the distinctive educational philosophy and integrated curriculum at X, describe how your personal characteristics and learning style would fit the institution and how X School of Medicine will help you achieve your professional goals. Or something like, why have you selected the X School of Medicine for your medical education? Please be as specific as possible. Again, the prompt can vary anywhere from a small paragraph to an entire page. So that's also going to make a difference in how much you're conveying that connection to the school and what you're identifying in this essay. Same goes for your other essays. The gap year essay. So for many schools, this is going to be your only space to discuss what you're doing in the upcoming year that you were unable to include in your primary application. Now, if you are a junior and applying this year, then this won't really apply to you. But if you're a senior applying or have taken a gap year already, this does apply to you. You want to make sure that you're indicating what you're doing in that year. Now, in your primary application, you're able to identify anticipated experiences, but you may not have had all your opportunities lined up for the upcoming year, or you may have incorporated additional opportunities since then, or maybe you're now in a position that you told them you'd be starting after graduation and you can add more about it. Utilize this space to highlight these experiences and what you've done since graduating so they can see that connection to the school and also see your intentionality. And also on that note, if you are taking a gap year and taking time off, I love it. I love the extra time you're taking because that makes all the difference in being a strong applicant, especially nowadays with how competitive medical school is. You really want to have the time to have a strong MCAT score, great experiences, great letters, and sometimes it can be hard to get the hours that you need just in 3 years without any gap years. If you're trying to apply out of junior year. So full respect for gap years. Make sure that you are showcasing that you're doing things in that gap year. We don't want to use it as just a year of vacation. This is still a process aligned with your medical school application process. If you do want to take time off and do absolutely nothing and quit all your jobs, I suggest doing that like next May when you already have your decision and you know where you're going to be going and what's happening. And then you can take a month or two to chill before medical school begins. But aside from that, really make sure that you're using this time to continue showcasing that connection to this path to medicine. And also keep in mind that if you're doing research or certain opportunities during this time, that can also translate over to your residency application. So the clock doesn't really stop. You want to keep it going as strenuous as that can be. If you don't take a gap year, then this is not a question that you would have to answer. You would be able to skip this question, and there would be no harm in that. Tailoring your essays. So, as mentioned previously, you always want to make sure that you are tailoring your essays to that specific school's mission and values. Even if it's not in the why this school essay, if it's coming in the challenge essay or the diversity essay or any other question that they're asking that aligns with your experiences and allows your experiences to highlight a reason why their mission or values will be a good fit for you, or maybe they have certain program offerings that align with what you're interested in. Utilize that as a way to strengthen your essays. Anywhere that you can show that connection to the school and align it with what you've been doing, use it because that's always there to serve you and to benefit your application process. Also, make sure that you are responding to the prompt at hand. It gets really easy to want to copy paste essays for different schools or look at a school and say, ooh, this essay is really similar to this other one that I just wrote. Let me take this and build on it or revise a little part of it. But then you realize you haven't tailored certain sentences that showcase you know exactly what the prompt is and it sounds like you're answering a different prompt. So make sure that you are directly answering the prompt at hand and addressing each question thoroughly so that they're able to see your unique attributes relevant to the school and that, again, you took the time to respond to this prompt specifically and have this understanding of what the school is looking for. There's a lot of points that come with just following directions and doing things right. And on the flip side, that's also an easy way for students to be able to lose their chances of progressing through the application process. Make sure, again, you're using unique anecdotes that aren't in other places in your application and that are unique to you. Every place where you're using an example, try to make it something that is very personalized and that allows you to stand out so that we're able to capture the committee's attention by making a memorable contribution, making them want to be engaged in your story, and showcasing your personal experiences, growth, and attributes that will make you a strong physician in the future. Now, there are some challenges that students can fall into when running through secondaries, and these are just things that you want to be wary of in general as you progress through this process. So some of the common pitfalls to be aware of are generic responses that fail to showcase your individuality. As we discussed, you always want to include anecdotes and examples that fit the context of each school that provide a very personalized experience. You also want to be very wary of word count and character limits. So school by school, that same question can come with a very different character prompt. One school can ask you about a failure that you overcame or a challenge that you faced and want you to put that in a small paragraph, 700 characters. Another school may give you 2,000 characters to run through that. Another school may give you 500 words to run through that. And each one of those will make a big difference in the extent of the story that you tell, the examples you incorporate, the skills that you're showcasing within it, and make sure that you're actually utilizing that space as well. So if you have 1,000 words versus 700 characters, utilize the space properly. We don't want to try to copy that same 700 character essay into the 1,000 word essay because they're clearly telling you they want you to be able to identify an essay with greater space. they're giving you the room to use, so you want to take advantage of that. And on the other end, be cautious of just cutting your essay early on because then you may be missing some very valuable information that you wanted in there. So even if you have similar prompts, you're always going to be tailoring here. Another common secondary pitfall is falling behind on your writing and submitting your secondary essays weeks late. This is one of those areas that does more harm than students may realize. You all said 2 weeks, so fantastic. You're aware of the importance of the timeline. Aim to stay on top of that, which will come with, again, prioritizing writing in this verification phase, and then also really committing to writing every day when you get your secondaries. It basically becomes like a full-time job for a few weeks. Christina, I'm sure you've seen that with your students as well. It becomes a very rigorous and intense writing process. I tell students, like, let your family know it's kind of like the MCAT where you were in a cave for a bit studying, but now you're going to be in a cave writing. I'd say basically until like end of July or so, give yourself that time. It will lighten up a little bit in August. It'll probably mid-August, like finish off for you if you're submitting everything in a timely manner, just based on some schools that'll get secondaries to you a little bit later. But really, June, July, plan to crank this out. If you're planning to take a summer vacation, aim to make it a little bit later in the summer so that you have time to commit to this writing process. As discussed, not answering the specific prompt can be a pitfall that students can face. It's easy to want to copy paste or pull from other schools, but make sure, even if it's relevant, even if the character count is the same, you're tailoring to fit the prompt and the school. Be wary of not providing new additional information. This is a safe space and a valuable space to be able to round out your application and showcase strengths that you weren't able to highlight in your primary application. You want to take advantage of that and use this as a chance to provide different anecdotes. So it can get very easy to kind of fall into telling the same stories you told in that primary application, particularly because you knew the primary application was strong. It took the time, you took the time to write it, you took the time to create good examples for it that aligned with your experiences. And you want to ensure that if you're doing that here, you're using strong examples, but changing them. There's nothing wrong with the examples you used in your primary, but you always want to use every chance you get to provide new information so that they have more to go off of to showcase why you'll be a fit. Another area is failing to tailor the essay to the school you're applying to, and failing to proofread or submitting an essay with typos or the wrong school name. Small things that you want to be cautious of that can make a very big difference. Do you recommend reading sample essays to get yourself started, or is that a bad influence on your writing? You can read sample essays just to get like ideas of what's desired with these types of essays, but you always want to be a little bit careful because sometimes the examples can get in your head. If you don't have experiences that are similar to theirs, you can start wondering if it makes sense for you to apply to that school, if you're strong enough, or it can get really easy for you to think of an example that you had that is almost identical to that and unintentionally copying similar content that they provided, which makes it difficult to make your application unique. But if you just want it to be able to just gauge ideas, help your own brainstorming process, to help you understand how to write it, go for it. So as you are tracking your application, you want to make sure that you are organizing your process because all of a sudden you're going to get many different secondaries. Each school will have a different deadline. Again, there's the overarching deadline and then your internal deadline of 2 weeks from receipt. They'll have different fees, prompts, and status updates in terms of whether they'll later allow you to provide updates and things like that. So tracking it will really help you in making a difference in this timeline. I suggest having a spreadsheet. I have one with all my students as well that identifies the school name, whether the secondary is in progress or submitted, when you submitted your primary to them, when you received your secondary, what that 2 week timeline is for the secondary, and then the date you actually submit it, and maybe even include a link to their website and a link to the application portal. The more information you give yourself on one spreadsheet, the easier it'll make it so that you're not running through multiple different documents in your emails or trying to look back at when they sent you something. It'll all be there and easy for you to track. And when it comes to drafting essays, from what I've seen, again, I like focusing on schools that are top priority for you. And that doesn't go necessarily into the pipe dream school, but rather a school that is very realistic for you based on your MCAT score, your GPA, your experiences, in-state versus out-of-state preferences, and that you'd be happy going to. So I'd say start with like two or three of those as just like top priority. And then you can look at past prompts and draft the longer essays first, since they'll require a little bit more thought and reflection. And then it'll be a little easier to use that to condense it for shorter essays. Now, I've also seen students start off with just writing essays for the common theme questions because they're likely going to come across those at some point. And that serves as their initial framework. And then they go into past prompts of other schools. That's completely acceptable as well. You want to make sure, however, you prioritize is what's best for you. Just have a system ready to go because otherwise it can get very easy to get lost in the process. How many schools do you recommend applying to? I usually suggest at least 20. National average is around 16, but I like to be a little bit higher than that based on your MCAT score, your GPA, your prereqs that you've taken already, location of the schools, things like that. That all makes a difference in how many you would apply to, but I usually seek out around 20. If you're applying MD and DO, at least 25. And then if you are a REAK applicant, I usually suggest around 30. If you're applying aggressively and want to have a really broad school list, my upper end cap is around 38 schools, just because I find that when you exceed that, students really struggle with getting secondaries in a timely manner or the quality drops. So that's what I kind of hold as like my upper end limit. Also, if you are extending beyond that, there's a good chance you're applying to schools that may be out of reach, or may not be as good of a fit. So that's where I have that as my upper limit. But I've also had students that are like, I want to apply everywhere. So in those cases, we will start off by having, let's say, 20, adding 10 more schools to the list once those first 20 are submitted. Then when the next 10 are in, submitting to more. And usually on their own, when they get to around 38, they kind of get tired and finish off the process. But if you want to continue beyond that, go for it. I just suggest staggering at that point. But 20 is the safe point to submit. Again, your MCAT score and GPA make a difference there. Do admissions essay committees prefer unique essay ideas and structures, or is conventional better? A unique essay is always going to stand out. Now, structure in terms of going like abstract or something, that can become problematic. But if you really make them think, that's a story that will stand out. I had one student that wrote a secondary essay about listening to like sci-fi books, like fantasy novel kind of things, and utilizing that as a way to like go on their walks. And while they're on their walks, picturing themselves in different worlds, and that really bringing out their creativity and also helping them de-stress and slow down their mind since it's always running. And that was just like a what do you do for fun kind of essay. And it was very creative, took a very different approach. They could have just said, enjoy going for walks and writing, but they turned it into this whole story where they were now like living in a sci-fi novel, and that stood out a lot to schools, led to multiple different acceptances to top 20 schools. Okay, let's see. I have some questions here. Do you have advice on how to prioritize schools based on feasibility? Specific, yes. So hang on to that question. We'll get to that at the end because it's going a little bit more into school list. So we'll address that one at the end. What are the different timelines to apply to medical school? If I haven't started UCLA yet, I start in the fall. How can I become an applicant who has Harvard, Yale, Stanford as my target medical schools? Great question. Save that for the end as well, so we can get into that because that's going more into the entire application timeline, but I absolutely want to highlight that. For staggering, do you recommend applying to 20 schools first and then a week later add 10 more? I would say start off with around that 20 initial. Even the 20 will give you a lot of writing in a very short span. But start off with the 20, and then once you start submitting some of them, you can submit as you get, you can add more schools as you submit secondaries. So not necessarily a week later, because remember, once your application is verified, any secondaries can just start coming through. So the longest period to get secondaries is that first cluster because you have to wait that 4 to 6 week period. And then a lot of those schools are a week or two behind. But then once you actually have your application verified, it's going to be quick. So let's say you submit end of May, your application is verified end of June, you get your first secondaries end of June, and they stagger to maybe like July 15th or so, a couple weeks of secondaries coming in. If on July 16th you submit to 5 more schools, you'll likely get secondaries for those 5 schools July 16th. So those are not going to stagger anymore because they're now in the process of sending secondaries. So you have to make sure that you are ready to receive those secondaries and submit right away in that case. Okay, and then I'm going to continue on a little bit and address the questions later because we're going a little bit more toward the whole application process. So I'm just going to hit a few more slides and then we'll run through a full Q&A at the end. Budgeting for secondaries. So you've already spent a lot of money on the primary application and submitting to each of the schools. Now with secondaries, keeping in mind that every school will have their own secondary fee for submitting these. They're around $30 to $180, with most of them being around 75 to 125. So I tell students anticipate around $100 a secondary. Doesn't seem that much at first, but when you think about the amount of schools you're applying to, it's around at least 2,000 on secondaries for many students. So you want to ensure that you're planning to budget for this accordingly upfront. If you qualify for the fee waiver, AMCAS fee waiver, some schools will honor that for the secondary as well. Some will not. So for that, you'll just want to be in touch with the school. But just be aware of the financial implications of this process. The benefit is many schools are still virtual for interviews, so that saves a lot in terms of cost, but this is still an area that you want to be able to budget for. And application success. So to be successful with your application process, with your secondaries, and just your entire timeline toward medical school, you want to ensure that with your secondaries, you are utilizing those unique anecdotes to convey your personal and professional growth. You want to ensure that you are reflecting on experiences and what you've learned, tailoring your essays to align with the different missions of schools and their offerings, highlighting qualities that will make you a memorable applicant and that you want the school to know about you. Pre-writing secondaries, one of the biggest things to ensure that your timeline does not get delayed and that you're able to write quality essays. Staying organized with the particular timeline of schools and ensuring that you are on top of what each school needs. Sometimes you may also have like a secondary you're working on that you think will be your priority one, and then all of a sudden a different school sends you a secondary and the essays need a lot of time, and then you'll pivot. That can happen as well. So ensure that you have flexibility. But again, that organized timeline and the spreadsheet will really help in ensuring that conflicts don't come about there. And always seek feedback. Even though secondaries come at you really quickly, what you write may be perfect to you up front, especially as you're writing dozens and dozens of essays in a short span, but may face pitfalls or may have room for growth Use this as a space to seek feedback, ensure that you are having people look at your essays. Even though it's a quick turnaround time, you don't want to compromise the quality and just submitting to submit. Have people look over your essays. And to succeed, always make sure that you are maintaining momentum throughout the application process. Basically, from now until next year, there's consistently going to be something. Be wary of that. Be wary of the momentum that you want to keep going. And the one time you'll have a little bit of a break is with interview season, but you'll still want to keep momentum by staying engaged with different schools, showing interest with update letters, things like that. So fully be prepared to have this process, a process that you commit to wholeheartedly this upcoming year, and utilize a strong secondary to showcase that connection to a medical school so that they are more likely to provide you with that interview offer so that you can showcase why you're a fit and earn that acceptance. Thank you all for your time today. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share with you. And please keep in mind that at Next Step Admissions, we're able to provide personalized advising, support with your secondary essays, and utilize proven strategies to ensure your success. So if you need any support, you can feel free to reach out to me at nicole@nextstepadmit.com. You can also connect with us on social media at Next Step Admissions Prep or reach out to us on nextstepadmit.com. I appreciate your time today. I appreciate the questions. Hopefully, we've made it as simple as possible for you to be able to progress through the next steps of the application process. For those of you submitting tomorrow, good luck. For those of you submitting in the next few weeks, you're still on time. Don't worry. Just give yourself the opportunity to submit a strong, timely application. And for those of you that are here as uh, lower lowerclassmen, thank you for utilizing this as an opportunity to get ahead and to know what to expect moving forward. Those of you that are upperclassmen, juniors, seniors looking to take a gap year, or just juniors looking to get an early start, use this time to start thinking about the experiences. And for all of you, whether you're applying now or applying in the future, make sure you are writing down stories as you're running through different experiences. Write down different anecdotes because you never know when that'll come through for you as an experience that you end up putting in a future application.